What's up guys, this is Ben from Rad Tech, and this is video 3 from our PC building series. Today we're covering motherboards. If you remember from video 1, you'll remember me talking about different sizes of motherboards. Here we have the ATX board, and here's the ITX. As you can see, they're quite different sized, and the ITX board is clearly why you would need this size for a smaller PC. In general, the ITX board has more or less the same functions and features of an ATX board, but with some reductions. Typically it'll have fairly similar I/O. You'll often see the ITX boards with 2 less RAM DIMMs, so 2 instead of 4. And then obviously it'll be a lot shorter, so you'll only have 1 instead of multiple PCIe slots. Some other things you might see specifically on the ITX board is your M.2 slots on the back, or 1 on the back, 1 on the front. The only real benefit to having an ITX board is the reduced footprint. With an ATX board you'll get all the features, plus more than you'll get on an ITX board for not much different of a price. On your motherboard, the centerpiece is where the CPU goes. One thing to note when buying your motherboard is whether it's AMD or Intel. One easy way you can tell this is by looking where the CPU goes. For an AMD motherboard, you'll see a lot of holes, and for an Intel board, you'll see a lot of pins sticking up. This is because, as we talked about in the last video, AMD CPUs have their pins facing down, and Intel CPUs don't have any pins but contact plates, where the pins on the motherboard come in contact. When you're buying your motherboard, a few other things to note are, if you're planning on buying an M.2 SSD, which I'll be covering in the next few videos, you'll want to make sure you have at least 1 or a few slots where they can be plugged in. Most motherboards will also come with a heatsink that'll go over top of the SSD to keep it cool. If you plan on having a lot of different drives in your system, you'll want to make sure that your motherboard has a lot of SATA ports and M.2 slots so that you can plug all your drives in comfortably. One thing to note is that some motherboards will turn off one of these SATA ports in order to have the other M.2 slot working. I learned this the hard way. I plugged in my second M.2 drive, and my SSD plugged into the SATA port just stopped working, and I spent about a week or 2 trying to figure it out, until I went on Reddit and found out that it was just the motherboard turning off the SATA port. A newer feature that some motherboards have been having in the last few years is these 2 gold connectors, which connect to a Wi-Fi antenna. So these motherboards have onboard Wi-Fi, instead of you having to get a separate Wi-Fi card. The board I have here is the Gigabyte B450 Aorus Pro Wi-Fi. I've been using it for the past year, and it's been perfect combined with my AMD 2700. This motherboard comes with the standard 4 RAM DIMMs and 3 full-size PCIe slots, along with 2 M.2 slots, 4 SATA ports, and Wi-Fi. It's got everything I need. If you're all about adding all the extra RGB to your system, you'll want to make sure that your motherboard can support lots of RGB. Gigabyte Aorus motherboards come with the software that you can control the RGB directly from this motherboard. While Gigabyte is the only motherboard that I've used, I believe that MSI and Asus come with their own RGB software as well. In this software, you can target individual RGB zones on the motherboard. This includes your RAM, different parts of the motherboard itself, and multiple different RGB connectors around the motherboard. I'll be making another video in this series talking about RGB as well. One thing to keep in mind is that there's websites like PC Part Picker that'll make sure that all the parts that you're buying are compatible with each other, and it'll let you know if there's any issues. You can also check out the subreddit r/buildapc and post any questions and comments that you may have, and go through other people's questions and comments in that subreddit as well, because a lot of people may have already had the same questions as you. Another thing to keep in mind when you're buying your motherboard is to make sure that it's compatible with your CPU. Some older motherboards aren't compatible with newer CPUs, so you'll want to check out the website of your CPU's manufacturer just to make sure that whatever motherboard you're looking into will be compatible with the CPU that you're going to buy. The last tip that I'll give you for this video is to double check that the motherboard that you're getting has compatible RAM DIMMs for the RAM that you're going to be buying. Currently we're in the generation of DDR4 RAM. Most RAM that you'll be able to pick up in stores is either DDR3 or DDR4. DDR3 won't be able to fit in the DDR4 DIMMs in your newer motherboards, so you'll want to make sure that you're looking for the right product. I'll be talking about RAM in the next video in this series, so be sure to subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss that video. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like this video and comment below what the motherboard you're using is now. Peace.